much. I'm privileged and such an honor to be here. When Father Tim called me months ago, he said, "Greg, do you believe in free speech?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Good, you're giving one on June 8th. I already loved this class in 2013. I feel very connected. Felicidades a todos los padres de estos jóvenes aquí. Con su permiso voy a dirigir unas palabras a ellos. Thank you for your attention. You know, folks are always hoping for some attention, especially folks on the margins. I had a 16-year-old, very earnest gang member named Louie come into my office and stand in front of my desk, and he says, "Look, I need your divided attention." I said, "You are in luck, because that's exactly what you'll be getting." You know, what Martin Luther King says about church could well be said about your time here at Cristo Rey. It's not the place you come to, it's the place you go from. And this moment is always going to happen, where you leave from here, but you leave from Cristo Rey with a vision. The prophet Habakkuk writes, "The vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it." But my sense of the class of 2013 already is you don't want to wait around for too long, you know, con los brazos cruzados, you know, and tapping your feet and staring at your watches. You want to make something happen. What you want to do is you want the world to look differently than it currently looks. You go from this place to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. Mother Teresa, I think, diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine nobody standing outside of it? How do we dismantle the barriers that exclude? How do we inch our way out to the margins and stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, with those whose burdens are more than they can bear, with those whose dignity has been denied? How do we find our way to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized, so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable, so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away? I suspect that if kinship was our goal, we would no longer be promoting justice. We would, in fact, be celebrating. So for 25 years, I've worked with gang members, and they've taught me everything of value. But in the last couple of years, they've taught me how to text. And I couldn't be more grateful to them, because I find that it beats the heck out of actually talking to people. And so I'm pretty good at it, LOL and OMG and BTW. And the homies have taught me a new one, OHN, which apparently stands for, oh, hell no. And I've been using that one quite a bit lately. So there I am in a car with two homies, older vatos named Manuel and Poncho, tattooed, been to prison. They work for me, do a variety of things. I have 350 employees. And so we're going to go give a talk, and Manuel's in the front seat, and he gets an incoming text, and he reads it to himself, and he chuckles to himself. And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Oh, it's dumb. It's from Snoopy back at the office." Well, I had just seen Snoopy. He gave me a big abrazote as the day was beginning. Snoopy and Manuel work together in the clock-in room, where they clock in hundreds and hundreds of our workers. I said, "Well, what's he say?" "Oh, it's dumb. Hang on. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up in county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong guy. We died laughing, and then I realized that Manuel and Snoopy are enemies. They're from rival gangs. They used to shoot bullets at each other. Now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. How do we obliterate once and for all the illusion that we're separate, that there's an us and a them? Cristo Rey is not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from to bridge any distance so we can arrive at that kinship. One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez as a friend. And I can remember once a reporter had said to him, "Wow, these farm workers, they sure love you." And Cesar just shrugged and smiled and he said, "The feeling's mutual." How do we get to that place of mutuality where we bridge even the distance of service provider, service recipient? It's mutual. One of the homies who found more job opportunities through Homeboy Industries was a homie I knew named Caesar. I knew him since he was a little jovencito growing up in the projects. Got into a gang, got into trouble. But then he'd come to me and I'd send him to a hotline somewhere, and then he'd always gravitate back to vague criminality, usually something involving drugs, the sale of, or the use of. But this one time he'd finished a 4-month stretch of probation violation in jail, and there he is sitting in front of me. And he says what homies often say, "This time it'll be different." I go, all right. So I pick up the phone, I call a friend of mine who runs a vending machine company. He had hired homies before. I hoped he'd hire Caesar, and he did. And Caesar began the next day. But 2 weeks later, there he is otra vez in front of my desk, and I said, "Híjole, de Santa, here we go." But this time he pulls out of his pocket his very first paycheck from the vending machine company. And he says, "Damn, G, this paycheck makes me feel proper. I mean, my jefita, she's proud of me. And my morritos, they're not ashamed of me. And you know who I have to thank for this job." And I said, "Well, gosh, who?" And he looked at me strangely and he said, "Well, God, of course." "Oh, sure, no. Oh, that's right, that would be God, yeah." He said, "You thought I was going to say you." I said, "No, gosh, God's number one, yeah." He said, "You are so lucky we're not living in them Genesis days." Them Genesis days. He goes, "Yeah, because God would have been had struck down your ass already by now." Well, we dissolved, and after we fell out of our chairs, and I defy you to identify exactly who's the service provider, who's the service recipient. It's mutual. So Homeboy Industries was born during the time, as you read in the book, when I was a pastor of the Forest Parish in the city of LA. Huge housing projects, largest concentration of gang activity in the world was my parish. We had 8 gangs at war with each other. I buried my first young person killed because of the sadness in 1988, and I will bury my 188th sometime this week. So we did a lot of things in those days. We started a school because so many gang members had given them moved from their home schools, so we started one. That brought gang members to the church, and that upset the apple cart a little bit, because aren't churches supposed to be hermetically sealed? You know, good people in, bad people out. That was a challenge. And then the homie said if only we had jobs, and so then myself and the women, we marched around the factories that surrounded the projects trying to find felony-friendly employers, and that didn't work so well. And then, so by 1992, we started Homeboy Bakery. A month later, we started Homeboy Tortillas. Once we had plural, we changed our name to Homeboy Industries. Not everything worked. Homeboy Plumbing really was not a huge success. Who knew people didn't want gang members in their homes? I did not see that coming. And then we just backed our way into becoming the largest gang intervention, rehab, and reentry program in the United States. 15,000 folks a year come to our office trying to discover some hope. We have a lot of classes, anger management, and parenting. We have free tattoo removal. No place on the planet Earth removes more tattoos than we do. A designated clinic, 3 laser machines, 30 volunteer doctors. So if any of you graduates are starting to regret your Puma tattoo, see me afterwards, Victor. And then we have all our businesses. We have our chips and salsas in all these stores. We have a restaurant at the LAX airport. What else do we have? Homeboy Silk Screen, Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Homegrown Merchandise, farmers markets. We're in 42 of them. We have 4 mini farms that provide produce for our restaurants. And Homegrown Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order. Not long ago, Oscar-winning actress Diane Keaton showed up for lunch. She got an Academy Award for Annie Hall, and she was in the Godfather movies, big movie star. Her waitress was Glinda. Glinda's a homegirl, been there, done that, big girl, tattooed, been to prison, felon. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is, so she's taking her order. And Diane Keaton says, what do you recommend? And Glinda rattles off the 3 platillos that she really likes. And Diane Keaton says, oh, have that second one. That one sounds good. And it's at that moment something dawns on Glinda. She looks at Diane Keaton, she says, wait a minute. I feel like I know you. Like maybe we've met before. And Diane Keaton decides to deflect it humbly. Oh, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before. And then Glinda goes, no, now I know. We were locked up together. Honest to God, that just took my breath away when I heard it. And I don't believe we've had any further Diane Keaton sightings now that I think of it. But suddenly, kinship so quickly. Oscar-winning actress, attitudinal waitress, exactly what God had in mind. And here's what's on God's mind. We need go no further than what Jesus says to the gathered, that you may be one. Cristo Rey is not the place you come to, it is the place you go from. And you go from here to create a community of kinship so that we may be one. All of you are called to be what Alice Miller, the late great child psychologist, called enlightened witnesses. People who through your kindness and tenderness and focused, attentive love return people to themselves. You don't hold the bar up and ask people to measure up. You just show up and hold the mirror up and you tell people the truth, knowing that your truth is my truth, and my truth is a gang member's truth, and it's all the same truth, and here's the truth. You are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. Then you watch people as they become that truth, as they inhabit that truth. And no bullet can pierce it. No 4 prison walls can keep it out. And death can't touch it because it's huge. You go from this place to create such a world where people know that truth and that we may be one. Enemies work together at Homeboy Industries, and at first it's difficult. A homie will come in and say, I'm ready, and I'll say, okay, I have an opening in the bakery, but you have to work with X, Y, and Z, and I rattle off the names of rivals, enemies, and they always do the same thing. They think for a long-ass time, and then they say, all right, I'll work with him, but I'm not going to talk to him. which used to bother me in the old days until you discover that it's impossible for human beings to demonize people they can't pull it off. So I had a little chaparrito, a kid everybody called Youngster, and I thought he was ready. And so Youngster came with me to our big, huge factory in a silkscreen plant. Our oldest business, been around for 19 years. Thousands of gang members have worked through there. We do high quality work, reasonably priced. We UPS to Minneapolis. So I invite Youngster in and I introduce him to all his co-workers. And I watch him as he shakes hands with everyone, even enemies, looks them straight in the eye, and I think, wow, this is great. Until Youngster gets to the last kid, a kid everybody called Puppet. And when Puppet and Youngster are in each other's vicinity, they mumble something. They stare at their shoes. They don't shake hands. Well, I know they're enemies because I know what gangs they hail from, but he's just going to shake hands with other enemies. I discover later that this is a hatred that's really quite deep and very personal, beyond which neither of them think they can get past. So I sensed that much at the moment, and I said, look, if you guys can't hang working together, let me know. I got a bunch of people who want this job. Calladitos, they don't say a word. 6 months later, Puppet is walking to a store some distance from his home, one of those little corner stores. And he goes in and buys something, but on the way home, he decides for some reason to take a shortcut, so he dodges into an alley because he's taken this detour. Suddenly, unexpectedly, he's surrounded by 10 members of a rival gang, 10 against 1, and they beat him badly, and he falls to the ground. And while he's lying there, they will not stop kicking his head until he's lifeless. Somebody finds his body and takes him to White Memorial Hospital, where he's declared effectively brain dead. But it's the policy at the hospital to keep you connected to machines for 48 hours, so you get 2 straight days of flat read and no brain activity, making it official for the doctors. This allowed family and friends to gather. I was at St. Louis University giving a talk. I flew home immediately. I've seen a lot of horrible things in my life, but nothing to compare to the sight of this young man with his head swollen many times in size. It was horrifying. You could barely train your eyes on it. And so at the end of the 48 hours, I gave him a blessing. I gave him la unción de los enfermos. We disconnected. And a week later, I buried him. But in the first 24 hours, as he was lying there beaten in the hospital, I was alone in my office. It was 8:30 at night, the phone rings, and it's Youngster, Puppet's co-worker from the silkscreen. And he says, hey, that's messed up about what happened to Puppet. I said, yeah, it is. And then with a certain kind of eagerness even, he says, is there anything I could do? Can I give him my blood? And we both fall silent under the weight of it, until finally he breaks the silence, choking back his tears, and he says with great deliberation, he was not my enemy, he was my friend. We worked together. Now, can I say that always happens? Yes, of course. Any exceptions? No, not one. And it shouldn't surprise us that God's own dream come true for us. That we be one just happens to be our own deepest longing for ourselves. For it turns out it's mutual. Cristo Rey is not the place you've come to. It's always been the place you go from. And you go from here to create a community of kinship so that no one's left out. For the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, you wait for it. God bless you, class 2013.
Thank you, Father Greg. Graduating senior Blake Madsen brings his thirst for knowledge and discernment to school each day. He had lead roles in the fall play, Trouble with Sandy, and our first ever spring musical, The Frog Prince. He's come to the stage to say a few words of gratitude for Father Greg Wells' presentation.
Father Greg Boyle has influenced people for years. I have been told from the very moment you walk through the doors of Homeboy Industries, you can tell that God is there. The work that Boyle has done to change the hearts of many is truly amazing. The dedication he has to removing some of the world's most difficult and most painful tattoos is motivation to keep moving. The words he spoke today are words to live by. Let these words guide you and inspire you, and let them lead you in all of your new endeavors. Thank you, Father Boyle, and may God continue to bless you as he does all of us. I want to present to you just a few small gifts to show our appreciation to you.